I think in Florida now, anyone can hunt a python, and you get a prize too. Like you get money.
It's just after sunrise in the Florida Everglades, late 2025. A small, brown shape sits motionless in the sawgrass. Ears twitch every few seconds, body warm from the first light hitting the tiny solar panel on its back. To any animal watching, it looks and feels like a living marsh rabbit. In reality, it's a machine, a robotic decoy built by the University of Florida and the South Florida Water Management District. Hidden inside are thermal pads that keep it at mammal body temperature, scent emitters releasing synthetic rabbit musk, motion-triggered cameras, and a transmitter. The moment a Burmese python comes within range, the camera records everything. An alert is sent instantly to a removal team, and within hours, another invasive snake is gone. In the first 6 months of the 2025 pilot program, these robotic rabbits helped locate and remove more pythons than random human patrols had managed in entire previous years. For the first time in 3 decades, the removal numbers are starting to outpace the birth rate in the test zones. This is the newest weapon in a war that started more than 30 years ago, and it is the only strategy that has finally begun to bend the population curve downward. The enemy is the Burmese python, one of the largest snake species on Earth. Adult females regularly reach 16 to 20 feet and weigh over 200 pounds. Tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands, now live and breed across South Florida. They have no natural predators here, and they have already wiped out most of the native mammals in huge sections of the Everglades. That is the crisis these silent solar-powered rabbits were built to fight. The story of how Burmese pythons took over South Florida is almost entirely a human creation. In the 1980s and early 1990s, the exotic pet trade in the United States was booming. Burmese python hatchlings were inexpensive, usually under $100, and were sold in pet stores, at reptile shows, and through classified ads all across the country. They were advertised as calm, docile, and impressive. A 2-foot baby python looked harmless and made a striking conversation piece. What the advertisements never said was that the same snake would grow to 15 or 20 feet in just 4 or 5 years and would eventually require hundreds of pounds of food annually. Thousands of people bought them anyway. Within a few years, many owners discovered they could no longer house or feed the animals. Instead of turning them over to rescues or zoos, a large number simply released them into nearby canals, lakes, or empty fields. Florida's warm climate meant the snakes survived, continued growing, and began to reproduce. The single event that pushed the invasion past the point of no return happened on August 24, 1992. Hurricane Andrew, a Category 5 storm with sustained winds of 165 to 175 miles per hour, made landfall just south of Miami. Among the thousands of structures it destroyed were several large python breeding facilities near Homestead. Holding tanks were smashed, outdoor cages were torn apart, and hundreds of Burmese pythons of every size escaped into the night. Many of those snakes ended up only a few miles from the western edge of Everglades National Park. Those released pets and storm-liberated breeders became the founding population that, within one generation, would turn one of America's greatest wilderness areas into a python kingdom. The Everglades turned out to be perfect habitat. Warm temperatures all year round, no freezing winters, endless hiding places in the sawgrass, mangroves, and tree islands, and most importantly, prey animals that had never seen a giant constrictor before. Native mammals like marsh rabbits, raccoons, opossums, and even deer had zero defenses against an ambush predator that drops from a branch or glides silently through the water and can swallow them whole. Female Burmese pythons can lay 50 to 100 eggs at a time, once a year. After mating, the female finds a hidden spot, usually an old animal burrow, a hollow log, or a pile of vegetation, and coils around the clutch. For the entire 2-month incubation period, she stays with the eggs, never leaving to eat. She generates heat by shivering her muscles, raising her body temperature several degrees above the air. to keep the eggs at the perfect 31 to 32 degrees C. When the hatchlings finally emerge, they are already 2 feet long, perfectly camouflaged, venomous from day one. They have mild venom in their saliva and completely independent. In the Everglades, there is nothing big enough and bold enough to prey on an adult python. No jaguars, no large crocodilians that hunt them in Asia, no eagles that take adults. Alligators will occasionally kill and eat a small python, but the reverse happens just as often, and large pythons have no natural enemies at all. Under these conditions, the population can grow extremely fast. Researchers estimate that, with unlimited food and no predation, a Burmese python population can double in size in less than 3 years. In reality, food became even more abundant as the snakes wiped out competing predators like foxes and bobcats. By the early 2000s, the founding population of a few hundred released and storm-escaped snakes had already exploded into thousands. By the end of that decade, the number was almost certainly in the tens of thousands, and today, the most commonly accepted estimates range from 100,000 to over 300,000 across South Florida. No one knows the exact figure because the habitat is so dense and the snakes are so good at staying hidden, but every new study shows the same trend. The population is still increasing. Between 2003 and 2011, researchers conducted road surveys and live trapping studies. In areas with high python numbers, they recorded drops of 90 to 99% in native mammal sightings. Marsh rabbits fell by 99%, raccoons by 99.3%, opossums by 98.9%, and white-tailed deer by 94%. Bobcats and foxes essentially disappeared from large sections of the park. One of the most shocking discoveries came in 2005 when a 13-foot python was found dead with a 6-foot alligator bursting out of its stomach. The snake had tried to swallow the gator and both animals died in the struggle. Photos of that incident went around the world and made it clear the invasion was not just a curiosity, it was an ecological catastrophe. With fewer mammals, the entire food web began to collapse. Birds of prey that depended on rodents and rabbits started going hungry. Scavengers vanished, so carcasses stayed longer, changing soil chemistry. Even disease patterns shifted because mosquitoes that once fed mostly on mammals began biting rats and mice more often, increasing the risk of Everglades virus transmission to humans. By 2012, the US Geological Survey published a map showing that under current climate trends, Burmese pythons could eventually establish populations all the way up the Atlantic and Gulf coasts, potentially reaching as far north as North Carolina and across the deep south to Texas. Florida had to act. The first response was removal by hand. Rangers and permitted hunters started capturing and euthanizing every python they found. The numbers were tiny at first, a few dozen a year. In 2013, the state tried something bigger, the Python Challenge, a month-long public hunt with cash prizes. More than 1,600 people registered from across the country. They paid a $25 entry fee, took an online training course, and spent weeks searching the Everglades with machetes, flashlights, and airboats. Television crews followed the whole thing. After a full month of effort, the total catch was exactly 68 snakes. 68 snakes out of an estimated population that was already in the tens of thousands and growing fast. The math was brutal. Even if every single participant had caught 10 pythons, it would have barely made a dent. Scientists ran the models. At that removal rate, it would take centuries to bring the population under control, and meanwhile, the snakes would keep breeding. The Python Challenge continued in later years with better equipment, thermal scopes, night vision, bigger prizes. Record years now see a few hundred snakes removed. It raises public awareness and brings in some extra removals, but biologists are blunt. The challenge has never moved the population needle even slightly downward. It proved one hard truth. Enthusiastic humans with basic training cannot find enough pythons in 1.5 million acres of dense swamp to matter. The invasion was winning, and Florida needed a completely different approach. In 2017, Florida stopped treating the python invasion like a sport and started treating it like a war. That year, 2 professional removal programs were launched that still operate today. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's contracted hunters and the South Florida Water Management District's python elimination program. These are not volunteers, they are full-time, paid contractors who work nights, holidays, and breeding season peaks. They earn an hourly wage plus a bounty, $50 for every python, plus an extra $25 for every foot over 4 feet. The longest snakes can bring in several $100s each. The hunters are trained in safe capture, humane euthanasia, a captive bolt or gunshot to the brain, and proper documentation. They patrol on foot, by airboat, by truck, and sometimes by helicopter. By the end of 2025, these 2 programs alone have removed more than 22,000 Burmese pythons, with annual removals now regularly topping 5,000 snakes a year. That number sounds huge until you compare it to the population. Biologists estimate that for every python taken out, 2 to 3 more hatch and survive the same year. The population is still growing. To try to close the gap, Florida threw every new tool it could find at the problem. Judas snakes. Male pythons are captured, implanted with radio transmitters, and released during breeding season. Hormones drive them straight to females and mating groups. Hunters follow the signal and remove entire clusters at once. Detection dogs, specially trained Labrador and Dutch Shepherd teams that can smell python's scent humans can't detect. In their best years, they locate dozens of snakes and nests that would never have been found otherwise. Thermal drones and helicopters flying at night when pythons are active and show up clearly against cooler vegetation. Environmental DNA sampling, water samples tested for python skin cells and feces to map where they are concentrated. AI software that scans thousands of hours of trail camera footage and flags anything that looks like a snake. Every single one of these methods works. Everyone finds and removes pythons that would have been missed. Combined, they pushed annual removals from a few hundred to many thousands. But even with all of them running at maximum capacity, the invasion kept expanding. The Everglades and surrounding lands cover more than 1.5 million acres of dense, wet, nearly impenetrable terrain. Pythons spend almost their entire lives motionless in thick cover, perfectly camouflaged, waiting for prey to walk past. You can fly drones, walk dogs, and track Judas snakes for months and still cover only a tiny fraction of the total area. By 2023, the scientists were forced to say it out loud. No combination of human hunters, dogs, or existing technology can search enough ground fast enough to outpace python reproduction. The only thing that reliably forces a python to move and expose itself is the one thing it can't resist: warm-blooded prey that smells right and moves like it's alive. That single fact is what finally led to the robotic rabbits, the first tool that doesn't chase pythons. It makes the pythons come to us. The turning point came when researchers finally admitted the core problem. Pythons are ambush predators that almost never move in the open unless they are looking for food or a mate. A Burmese python can stay perfectly still for days, sometimes weeks, half submerged in a canal or coiled inside a clump of sawgrass. Its camouflage is near perfect. Its body temperature matches the surroundings, and it breathes so slowly that even the best thermal cameras struggle to pick it up among the heat signatures of rocks and logs. Hunters, dogs, drones, and trail cameras only find the snakes that happen to be moving at the exact moment someone or something is looking in the exact right spot. In an area the size of the Everglades that is statistically almost impossible. Every year, the removal teams were getting better. More snakes caught, more nests destroyed, more ground covered. But every year, the population still grew. The math was merciless. For every python removed, 2 to 3 more hatch and survive in the parts of the swamp no team ever reaches. The only reliable way to make a python reveal itself, to force it out of hiding and into the open where it can be seen and captured, is to offer it something it cannot resist: warm, moving prey that smells like a mammal, That single realization changed everything. It explained why 20+ years of hunting, bounties, dogs, and technology had barely slowed the invasion, and it pointed directly to the one strategy that might finally work at scale. Give the pythons the prey they are programmed to hunt, but make sure that prey is not alive and cannot be eaten. That is exactly what the Robotic Rabbit program does, and it is why, for the first time since the invasion began, the population curve is starting to bend downward instead of up. The turning point came when researchers finally admitted the core problem. Pythons are ambush predators that almost never move in the open unless they are looking for food or a mate. To catch large numbers, you have to go exactly where they are at exactly the right moment, and the Everglades is simply too big and too dense for humans or dogs to cover effectively. The only reliable way to make a python reveal itself is to offer it something it cannot resist: warm, moving prey that smells like a mammal. That single realization changed everything. It explained why every previous method, hunters, dogs, drones, Judas snakes, could only chip away at the edges. And it pointed to the one solution that could finally work at scale. That solution is the Robotic Rabbit program, now active across South Florida. Solar-powered, heat-emitting, scent-releasing decoys that turn the python's own hunting instincts against it. For the first time in more than 30 years, Florida is no longer just reacting. It is forcing the snakes to come to us. And that is where our story truly begins.